First of all, are you sure you're in the right room? You're in the right place? This is crypto?
Yeah.
You sure? I thought that there was some confusion. This is like the opposite of exciting. Okay. First thing about me is I'm Russian. I brought these just for this, so that I could say deal with it. So as I promised in the description, this is not a typical cryptology talk because crypto is math. It used to be all art, now it's all science. It's impossible to talk crypto without math because you're really not saying much. But the thing is, I have an hour, so what can I possibly tell you in an hour that will make any kind of impact? Yeah, we could go deep into, say, one cipher. We could look at elliptic-curve cryptography. But the thing is, I'm fairly sure you're not here for a math class, and I want to create a conversation about what crypto does for us, what it is, and what it absolutely is not. And so I taught a course on this at the university where I used to work, and what I did, I took pretty much that material that I taught to my students. I took math out of it and I put memes into it. This presentation is basically loaded with memes. It's an overloaded deck. There's like 50 slides. We're not going to go through all of this. And most of this is just so that you could look at memes and laugh. We are not going to go into details, into really detailed cryptographic construction schemes. That's not what this is about. But I am going to show you quite a few blunders. I'll show you some things not to do. So what's my point? What am I trying to tell you here? And my point is actually very, very simple. I've noticed that for most people, for most non-technical people, when someone hears the magic words, it's encrypted, and immediately they're saying, oh, okay, we're good, it's encrypted. And my point is this. If the words it's encrypted mean absolutely nothing to you, like they're meaningless, you're in the right place, and just relax and watch the memes. Unfortunately, what I've been noticing is that when you give someone your data, say, and they say it's encrypted, all of a sudden your mind's at peace. And it shouldn't be, because like I said, the words it's encrypted means nothing. Please take this kind of metaphor for me. You have, say, $1 million. No, let's make it interesting. You have $1 billion. And say that's a metaphor for your data, your crown jewels, your IP, intellectual property, not Internet protocol. And when someone says it's encrypted, they are putting it behind a door and they're shutting the door, right? So it's invisible to a naked eye. It's behind the door. Your data is scrambled. Like if you're just looking at your data, yeah, it's garble. You can't really say anything. But if that were the case, if somebody took you $1 billion and put it behind the door and shut it, you would be mad not to ask some questions. Namely, is the door locked? And if it is locked, how good is the lock? Did they purchase it? Is it the padlock from Walmart for $2.99? Who has the keys? Obviously, you better have the keys to your own encrypted data, but who else has the keys? How are the keys guarded? Those are crucial questions. And finally, maybe most importantly, is the door guarded? And that means, is the ciphertext authenticated? Because no matter the ciphertext, given enough time to a master or even an expert level adversary, unauthenticated ciphertext fall in due time. And I will show you a very simple but very vicious attack called padding oracle attack. It's very simple. It's been around for years. There's nothing special about it. And I'm not going to explain too much about why I do it or how I do it. You can just Google padding oracle attack. But I will show you. We will attack one of my ciphers which I misimplemented. So basically, my point boils down to this. When I want to create a conversation, and I want a call to action to you is whenever, I know that this is a hacker convention, all of you guys are pretty smart, but whenever you are talking to people, and whenever you see this reaction, when you have this is encrypted, and someone says, okay, so we're good, you encrypted my data, checkbox checked, that's it, we're in compliance. That's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. In fact, you know what, let me jump to the very, very end, and there's also another kind of important point. Let's go one up. So, final thoughts. Crypto blunders are everywhere. And you can just Google crypto blunders and you'll see hundreds of results. Unlike software bugs, so with software bugs, even not security vulnerabilities, with software bugs they're so easily detectable because with software bugs it's basically a system does not do something it's designed to do. And if you have good enough quality assurance engineers, they catch it. And if they don't catch it, you're going to hear from your clients very soon that stuff doesn't work. Now, with software vulnerabilities, it's a lot trickier because that's you saying more about, it's not that the system doesn't do what it's supposed to do, it does more than it's supposed to do. It's like an overbuilding a chip. Yeah, it works, but then if you try to if you try to attack it, you get results that it shouldn't give you. Unfortunately, with crypto blunders, it's even stealthier. Again, like I said, to the naked eye, you can't detect the difference. It looks scrambled enough, but unfortunately, unless you implement crypto very precisely and very correctly, most people fall. Again, as long as you know how to attack them, if you don't do things properly, I will argue that you might not as well encrypt in the first place. Because again, normal people wouldn't attack you, and to an expert adversary, if you screw up your ciphers, you might as well, like you see in the heading Oracle attack, you might as well just open your data out to plain text. Now, under no circumstances should you ever roll your own crypto. That is blunder number one. I don't want to discourage you from creating your own crypto. Sure, that's fun. I do that too. If you do, what you should be doing is you should be submitting your crypto works to competitions, which I open every few years to come up with more better ciphers. You should never ever write something and then just use it. And you should always, and you should never try to implement algorithms yourself. For example, say you want to implement, AES GCM, Authenticated Cipher. You Google it and Wikipedia gives you what the algorithm is and how everything is done in the algorithm. Even if you're a master coder, you'll probably make a mistake. Crypto is brutally complex to get right. The monster is in the details. Okay, so, yeah, now let's go to the beginning. Alright, and like I said, this presentation is loaded with memes. I will not go through everything. Let's start with brief history. The only thing I want to point out here is a lot of people believe that crypto originated with Rome, with Caesar, but it's actually way before Caesar. The first known ciphers come to us from Egypt 4,000 years ago. And it is believed that really the first ciphers were originated with the first written communications. Apparently humans wanted to keep secrets for a long time. Another thing I want to highlight, in Middle East in about 800s AD, they made a huge breakthrough. They noticed that if you use deterministic ciphers, they are completely vulnerable to language frequency attacks. And every language has a particular signature, as I'll show you. We will not go through all the classic ciphers, but I just cannot talk about crypto without bringing Caesar. So again, it's believed that Caesar is the father of our modern crypto. Not really. So again, with Caesar alphabet, you have your plain text alphabet at the top. The classic shift is that of 3, but again, you can do anything between 0 and 25. You just shift the cipher alphabet and simply then you look up what letter you want to encrypt. You look straight down, H encoded becomes K, and so forth. Straight down encryption. Decryption the opposite way. Yeah, we'll skip @bash for now. I'm not gonna go through everything here. We'll skip Polybius, we'll skip this. If we have time, I really want to hit, I love Trimethius' tables, but again, can't talk about crypto without Visionaire. Funny thing, Visionaire did not create the Visionaire cipher, it was misattributed to him, but that's how history works. And another example is that Ralph Merkle's name was almost never mentioned in Diffie-Hellman key exchange, even though he started that idea, but he didn't really get anywhere with it. The Visionaire cipher, how you do it again, you encode your alphabet. Sometimes it's done 0 through 25 or 1 through 26, does not matter. You encode it, so again, H becomes 08 right there. And then you pick. Wait, what? I'm sorry, this isn't correct. This should be shifted. There should have been a tab here. So 19 is actually under between 8 and 1. 5 is between these two, and these two are hanging off the end here. Yeah, sorry about that. Looks incorrect. So the way you do this, you encode your plain text and the key, whatever your encoding is, and then you simply do 8 plus 19 is 27. And then you wrap, a modulo 26 is basically you wrap around the alphabet. So there are 26 letters. If you get 27, that means you go back to 1. That's how we end up with 1 here, and with A in the ciphertext. Again, I'm not going to get too much into detail, but I thought I'd put that on the boss meme because it's misattributed to Visionary. He came up with another cipher, but that's another story. The Enigma Machine. So Arthur Scherbius came up with this thing. It's believed one of the most perfect things invented at the time. Again, yes, it was broken by the Bletchley-Park team, but at the time, Enigma was thought to be quite secure because what Bletchley-Park team did, nobody could have anticipated that. That was a breakthrough in computing, in cryptography, in everything. But yeah, it was an incredibly clever machine. And here's his making fun of Caesar. Most of the credit always goes to Mr. Turing, but his team he by himself couldn't have done the thing. His team was absolutely brilliant, and it goes for the whole team. The effort that they provided that broke. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to skip this for now. Just how Enigma works. I did this with 3 rotors. Rotors rotate basically every key. One of the rotors rotates every key you strike, and then they rotate at different intervals. We'll come back to this if we have time. There are more important things. This is the typical triangle of security. I'm sure you're all familiar with the CIA. And crypto doesn't do so much with the availability of systems. Well, it can in a way, but crypto focuses on protecting confidentiality, which is your ciphers, encryption, and integrity. So my metaphor from the beginning, it's most of the time not enough to simply lock the door. Given a master adversary, if the door is not guarded, they'll find a way in. It's just a matter of time. It has to, because when you we'll get into that. So let's introduce, this is the setting that we use. So we have ILS as the client. It's not a device, it's a computer program. It's a browser, it's curl, it's whatever. You have Bob as the server. Once again, it's a computer program, not an actual computer. Charlie will say it's the adversary. All Alice and Bob want to do, they just want to communicate safely and securely, and you see the series of request-response going on. And under today's security model, we assume that Charlie observes every single communication that happens in between them. He sees everything. Because, again, this is not a math talk, but if we can design schemes that are secure against this, then, of course, you can argue that if the Charlie is not all the time monitoring, then it's even easier. But we assume that every communication is monitored by the adversary. Crypto is absolutely everywhere. It's in the web. It's everything. You would not have any kind of secure commerce, e-commerce, without crypto. And we'll get into public key later on. Now, let me emphasize one thing. What cryptology is not, and again, I think this is my personal thing. Some people say otherwise. Don't get me wrong, we do encrypt, you should encrypt data at rest. You should encrypt data in transit. That's just the way it works today, especially with everything in the cloud. So you could argue that practically encrypt everything, but the way you go about making that statement is everything has to be very precise, it has to be calculated. Whenever you are faced with a security issue, if the first thing that comes to your mind is let's just encrypt it, it's not exactly how that works, and really renders some hot water if you're not careful. So what I'm trying to say by these 3 memes is that, yes, we do use cryptology for a lot, but that's not how it's not just like, let's just encrypt the whole world, right? The note bearer says, no, and Picard isn't happy. You never want to see Picard happy. Okay, so this is actually, there's a lot of words here, I'll try to explain. This is quite important. When we say, is something secure, when we say is a cryptographic construction of schema secure, if you just say something is secure, your words are meaningless, they're kind of wasted. Because secure against what? Against whom? I would argue that Visionaire cipher is secure against a kindergartner, but we obviously don't use it today. So there are, I think, like you can argue there are a few more, but there are four main adversarial capabilities that we recognize today, and these are in the order from the weakest to the strongest. At the weakest point, you have what's called a ciphertext-only attack, or a non-ciphertext. What that is saying is you have simply one or a group of ciphertext, you have no knowledge of what the plain text is. You are the weakest attacker, you simply intercepted some communication and you try and to bash your head against the wall, try and see what the encryption scheme was, and you try and attack it. One step down from this, we have a known plain text attack. This is what the guys at Bletchley Park did. They had a lot of ciphertext, and then they had some plain text for those ciphertexts. So in other words, they knew what was encrypted, and they observed the scrambled, well, in their case, bytes or scrambled letters. And believe it or not, that was enough to defeat Enigma. Because, funny thing is, Scherbius, he warned the people who were in charge of the military movements, he warned them how the machine should never be used. Like he said, that do not let your people initiate each communication with the same thing, day after day. Either a common greeting, like hello, good day, guten tag, or something else. Don't use like the first name. You know how we say, hey, Alex, and it's like Alex, comma. Don't do that, because if you do that, it will eventually defeat the cipher. And well, I think you kind of know the history, and that's exactly what happened. And they were able to build the machine. Again, the machine they built probably wouldn't. See, I'm not certain there. I think it would not be able to compute efficiently enough without, if they only had ciphertext, I don't think they would have been efficient enough. But known plaintext attack, that's what kills Enigma. One step down, you have chosen plaintext attacks. And this, in fact, defeats any deterministic, non-randomized encryption. What I'm saying is, if your cipher encrypts high 2 times in a row and gives me the same ciphertext, known plaintext attack completely destroys it. Because again, not a math talk, but all I have to do is I just have to encrypt a whole bunch of things, compile a huge table of all like common things a particular protocol uses, all the messages, and then I can simply look up what the ciphertext is. The last one is kind of what we assume today. I don't think you can assume less than that today, and this is the most powerful mode of the adversary. Here, the adversary can encrypt any arbitrary message. He can also ask us to decrypt any arbitrary message. If you know what's going on, like I know a lot of you guys here are real smart. If you know what's going on, you know what's going on. But you might be wondering, why would we be decrypting malicious ciphertext that the adversary is trying to trick us with? And we'll get to that. But again, that's going from the least powerful to most powerful. Ah, right, what I was saying. You can't just say something is secure. Secure against what? So you see here at the top, scissor shift. I mean, it's a kid cipher. You tried 26 possibilities and you got it. Visionaire, it's probably okay against just ciphertext attacks because, like if you change your keys, it's okay. But chosen a known plaintext that dies. Enigma. So the reason I put this as fine here is because this is what defeated Enigma. But when it was designed, it was supposed to withstand this type of attack again. They did not think that they would be up against a machine as powerful as Bletchley. They built it on the Bombay system from Poland, I believe. That's why I put that there. So that's what killed Enigma, but it was designed to withstand that. And this is modern AAS. I'm the boss. I'm the boss. What's that? I'm not saying AAS is broken. But there's RIP here against chosen ciphertext attack. And Jackie is confused. We'll get into this. I'm not saying AES is broken. It's not. Oh, we gotta hit this. So this guy, August Kerckhoffs, in the 19th century, not 20th, 19th, he saw where the whole thing was going. And again, when he says crypto systems or systems, he does not mean computers. 19th century. Even if he was like a farseer, you would argue that he probably would not quite envision what we have today. But yet, he has 6 famous laws, but I'm not going to go through all of them, just this one. The system must not requires secrecy. Again, by system, he at his time means a pen and paper system, some kind of a crypto construction that he was using. And he's saying that as long as the key is secret, you can climb up Mount Everest, you can shout from the roof of the world, "This is my cipher. I dare you to break it." And if it's a good cipher, it should not be breakable, as long as the key is secure. And he's saying 19th century. And this is the law that's as true today as it is now. You should be able to, let me make this point. So if you ever ask like a company or whoever, so how do you encrypt my data? If they ever say, we use a proprietary in-house cipher. Your next question should be, do you have mathematicians on staff? I don't mean programmers. I don't mean network guys. Or security guys, mathematicians, because that's what it takes. And if they don't, run for the hills. So going back to the Middle Eastern mathematicians in the 800s AD or so forth, so they started this idea that if your cipher is deterministic, a simple language attack, a simple letter frequency attack completely annihilates it. And so every language is unique, of course, and the signature would not apply to German or French or some other, but in English, we all know that the most common letter is E, followed by T, followed by A, and it has its signature. And so one of the quizzes my students did was they crushed the Vigenère cipher with nothing more than letter frequency attack. I gave them enough ciphertext, like half a page, to make sure that, well, again, we're not going to get into Vigenère, but the key basically rotates, and the same letter, if it's next to each other, they're encrypted differently, right? Again, not going to get too far into this, but there's this real long BS message. This is a very long sentence that does not really say anything. Encrypted with Caesar Shift 7, and immediately, if you just count the number of occurrences of letters here, you see L is 24 times. And indeed, L is E. And that's how letter frequency attacks work. So it does not matter what your permutation is, how exactly you are going from like A to Z, or A or E to L. What it's saying is that if the plain text characters are the same, the ciphertext characters are the same. XOR operator, again, it's like a joke that all cryptologists do. They just XOR stuff together and come up with these ciphers. Why XOR? It does not need to be XOR. Whatever the operator you use, all it needs to be is that the probability of getting a 1 versus a 0 has to be 50%, 0.5 exactly, because otherwise you need a linear operator for these type of operations. And is not. For example, if you take an AND operator, say your ciphertext is 0. Well, you don't know whether the message was 1 and the 0 and the key was 1, or you don't know if this or this, right? You can't decrypt. It's more of a... It's used in other configurations, and this is of course, the one-time pad cipher, probably one of the most simplistic yet perfectly secret ciphers. Again, perfectly secret in mathematical terms, it should never be really used anymore. And all you do is you take a plain text bit, you take a key bit, you XOR them like this. If they are different, then the result is 1. Otherwise, the result is 0. In fact, one-time pad is very famous. It was used, I think, between the Washington and Kremlin, the Red Phone. I think they had agents trafficking like reels and reels of pseudo-random looking one-time pad keys so that the people there could talk. All right, let's pick up the pace. AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, that's what we'll be attacking with our padding oracle attack. I'm just going to say it's a block cipher. It's a subset of Rimdal ciphers. Think Rimdal to AES, it's like Ketchak to SHA-3. AES, it's not really a cipher, it's a pseudo-ciphers, and like when they choose the next one, it will still be AES. It's not like the name of the cipher, it's the name of a standard, if you will. Currently, AES is the suite of Rimdal ciphers. It's the first and only like publicly available cipher that NSA said, we approve, we stand behind this. It's, I think, okay to encrypt non-confidential as well as confidential, secret, and I think it's up to top secret classified information. three very important things about AES. We'll take a look at Initialization Vector, Padding Mode, and Cipher Mode. So one of the, I'm sorry, this is my pet peeve. Salted hash, fine. Even peppered hash, fine. Lost that battle long ago. But please don't say salted ciphers. It's a vector. It's an initialization vector. So, troll here. And ID or salt, I mean, you guys all know that it needs to be pseudo-random, cryptographically pseudo-random. The probability that you have two IDs encrypting plaintext under the same key should be negligible. Let's take a look at how not to do it. Picard is not happy again. So what's the problem here? Look at this. The facepalm bear is going nuts. The problem is that computational pseudo-randomness, it's a commodity. It's not easy to come by. And normal functions like random, math.random, system.random, whatever, they do not have access to those truly good random bits. And in fact, I hope most of you know that when you call something like this, what you get is not really random. And it can be fairly easily predicted what's going to come next, because it's a cycle. It recycles bits that look random, and you're going to end up with a duplicate ID in a reasonable time. So what is this randomness? If I give you this string, is this random? All A's? How about this? How about this? This looks certainly random, right? And again, not the math lesson here, but randomness is not a property of a string per se. Like this all H string, it will appear pseudo-randomly with certain probability after so many samplings. Right? Randomness is a distribution. It's a uniform distribution, not something that comes out of it. Something that comes out of a distribution cannot be said to be random or not random. It simply happened. It's a fact. Now, how you sample it, that's what matters. Now, in this better example, this is, I believe I put it's a C# syntax, and we're using system security cryptography. And see here, we are utilizing a crypto service provider, not a simple math.random. If you use something math.random to generate salts or IDs, that's a blunder, a big one. Can't talk about crypto without talking about 802.11p web. So first of all, they really blundered the RC4, sorry, RC4 is a stream cipher. And so RC4 by design doesn't have a nonce or an ID or anything of the kind. Right, and the engineers went around it, and they put a 24-bit ID. In this instance, it's called a nonce, number only used once. 2 to the 24. Again, not a math lesson, but it's not a big number, and it recycles fairly frequently. In fact, there was such a mistake that some cards they had their ID reset to 0 after a power cycle. But even if that didn't, you can see that I put 1 gig here. I think it's actually less than that. I think if you're lucky, maybe half a gig of transmission, and you can, the nonce repeats and you recover the key. So yeah, 24 bits is not where we want to be with our randomness. And ID is what gives a cipher entropy, chaos. Chaos is important because we are trying to pursue this indistinguishability principle, where an adversary seeing like a string drawn from a random distribution and your ciphertext, they should not be able to tell the difference which is which. And yeah, randomness is huge. So again, to demonstrate this attack, we're going to do CBC mode. That's a classic with padding oracles. Why do we pad? Block ciphers can't really encrypt partial blocks. So say if in the AES block is 16 bytes, here for simplicity we'll say it's 8 bytes. So how do we encode? There are many standards. You can append null bytes to it. You can do 1 followed by as many zeros as you need. There are several ISO standards, but we will take a look at PKSCS number 7, and it's a standard for public key crypto system standard number 7 by the RSA company. Simply, this is how it works. You plug in your text into the block, and this is not encrypting yet, it's encoding, because you need to encode for the AES CBC mode to have a full block to work with. You simply put your text, however many slots you have left, again, we're assuming 8 bytes here for simplicity. You simply put that number of bytes into each slot. So hello takes 5, so you have 333. Hi takes 2, so you have 6 left. Well, guess what? 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. uber lead here takes all 8 bytes. In PKCS7, what you must do is you have to append a whole new block with all 8s. Fairly simple. Cipher mode is one of the most important things in AES. Depending on what you choose, it can be, well, you'll see on the next slide what it can be. The only reason I put the first ECB here to show you the next slide. If you do anything with this ECB anymore, go stand in the fire, a big one. You have cipher block chaining, and there's propagating cipher block chaining, and there's cipher feedback, blah, blah, blah. Counter mode. Counter mode, actually, funny enough, it transforms AES from a block cipher into a stream cipher. But we're not going to get into this. CBC, cipher block chaining, all it does is you have your IV, it feeds into the message, this is the XOR symbol, and it goes and goes and goes. So message 1 actually as it's being encrypted, it's being copied here into the next block. So IV, in fact, affects every block that comes after this. And this is how we're going to attack this. Oops. Oh yeah, ECB mode. I know classically it's a penguin, the ECB penguin, it's known, but I thought I would do this. This is nice. This is not nice. ECB is dumb. Okay, let's do the demo. Again, the construction we're attacking is AES 256 CBC BKCS7. This is the ciphertext that was generated by encrypting a sentence, "You got it!" exclamation mark. We are using chosen ciphertext attack, and we are using an oracle. So I have one of my servers is hosting an oracle, and it's not going to give us a decryption of the garbage that we're going to feed it. It's going to simply tell us, did it decrypt successfully, or did it erase, it's a bad padding exception, I think, something like that. It's going to return 1 or 0. And a notion of security about AES CBC, if as much as a single bit is leaked, the whole thing falls completely. And we're going to leak a little bit more than a bit. Okay, let's take a look at it. And this is not a class on how to do padding oracle, so I'm not going to say like why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just going to simply show you. So we have the ciphertext, and this padding oracle is a method. Oh yeah, I'm using Java, and this is Eclipse. Deal with it. So this padding oracle is a method that takes a ciphertext and makes a GET request to my server. My server decrypts it without checking anything. It decrypts the ciphertext and gives me 1 or 0. So first of all, we'll do the default. This is just the ciphertext being passed, so it should return true. Yep. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start feeding it garbage. I'm going to replace bytes from the ID and keep doing it until I get an error. So this should succeed. Sure enough, it's still true. However, if I go one step further, I replace 1 more byte with zeros, we're getting false. Now the server tells me that I decrypted good stuff and it is purely garbage. It doesn't even parse. And this is all the information you need to completely bring this down. Now what I say here in the comment is, we know that this byte in the ID, 88, is part of a padding. As soon as I overrode it, it gave me an exception. And that tells me that the last 5 bytes of the encoded message, according to the CS7 standard, is 55555. What we do here is we take the IV that we had, and the last however bytes we need, we XOR with all the 5s, and then once again with all the 6s, because what I'm doing is I'm pushing the encoding 1 step farther each time, and I'm forcing the cipher to go through a loop here. So this is what ended up after the XOR. And now I'm going to be attacking this byte, the next byte after 88, byte 90. And all you have to do is you have to try 256 possibilities, because in ASCII, that's how many bytes we have. And the simple for loop does exactly that. Because it's Java, bytes are from -128 to 127, don't worry about that. So all I'm doing is I'm asking my server 256 questions. And once it returns true, it's going to take a few seconds. Once it returns true, we get a byte B7. It's game over. So what that tells us, again, I'm not explaining everything how it works, but what that tells us is the inverse of the cipher of the f of k, XORed with this byte, B7, that's what gives me the 06 that I was feeding it. Well, guess what? I'm going to pull up a hex XOR here, even though I put it down to the code. So what we're going to do is we're going to XOR B7 with 06 to give me, no. Am I no longer close? Okay, we're not going to get this. I wrote everything down. Just take my word on it that when you XOR these together, you get byte B1. And what you do now, you know that your message is this byte B1 XORed with the original byte of the ID 90, and that gives you byte 21, which you'll notice is a printable character, an exclamation mark. Check and mate. We just revealed one of the plaintext characters of AES to physics CBC KCS7. And again, take my word on it. What you do now is you simply XOR back with 6s and on with 7s, and you keep pushing byte by byte. And what you notice here, this attack is executed in probabilistic form efficiently. I don't have to wait a week. I don't have to wait a month for anything to compute with the crazy numbers. It's done completely in real time. And if you ever have and you really never know when there might be a padding oracle or any kind of oracle hiding behind your application. So let's go back to this. I should really hurry. Okay, so this leads us into integrity. That was my point from the beginning. There are some things that don't necessarily require integrity, and it's a lot more computation that you sometimes need, but I would argue that really for the vast majority of applications, you have to authenticate your ciphertext. Because what you do, you stop all attacks on the ciphertext code. You're telling the adversary, before you even get a shot at cracking the cipher, you have to defeat whatever gives you the integrity. And we do that with HMACs. And this is a bad example if you use not an HMAC, not a message authentication code, but simply like a hash. Anyone can compute a hash, pointless. You have to, again, in this C# we call system security cryptography, and you compute an HMAC. Picard is now happy. So authenticated encryption in bigger terms looks like this. This gives you, this is your AAS, this gives you the ciphertext. What you do then, you use a different key, not the same key. Key 2, key 1, and some authenticated ciphers, they produce that second key for you from the key 1, but you don't want to use the same key in its entirety. And you simply feed that into an HMAC, and it signs your message. Again, there are several ways to sign messages. There's like hash nmac, encrypt nmac, encrypt thenmac. You want to authenticate the ciphertext, and there are applications where computing your HMAC on the message might work, but you authenticate in the ciphertext, not the message, whenever you're encrypting. So this is what authenticated encryption gives you. Charlie feeds garbage to the server, attacking the cipher. And if it's authenticated, the point is, before you decrypt, you must make sure that the authentication type computes. You never decrypt. You trash that complete communication if something does not compute, because that tells you that something went horribly, terribly wrong. In this case, Picard is complaining, the note bearer says, this is garbage. I'm not going to decrypt this. I don't know who this is. This does not authenticate. And Charlie is throwing tables because, in this case, if AES CBC was authenticated, the attack would not work. All right. Public key route. It's all about prime numbers, as I'm sure you know. And the properties that prime numbers only ever have 2 factors. I put 1 in there, and it's practically a prime number, but technically it's not. So it's excluded. 1 is not. And what's the whole thing with public key? Again, not to this public key. It's magic. It's fantastic. But you know how the only job of Internet Explorer is to download another browser? The only job currently of public key encryption, again, not integrity. Integrity is huge. Public key integrity is the basis for all secure communications, for all the trust that we have today. But public key encryption, its only purpose is to distribute private keys and use private key encryption. Because public key crypto is incredibly expensive and slow. So RSA problem, a variant of the problem, it states that, again, not a math course, technically everything I say here is modulo a prime, or modulo a product of primes. It's very carefully selected numbers. It's not just hard to factor, it's hard to factor modulo prime. And you can see how, even for a human, it's easy for you to say, yeah, 21 is 7 and 3, but 143, you have to go a little bit higher. And the thing is, if a human doesn't have, computers rarely can solve something a human cannot. Computers don't really solve anything. Human solves it, and then you feed instructions to the machine to do it faster. And we don't really have a good way to factor, to compute factorization modulo a product of primes. Another hard problem we have is the discrete logarithm problem. So why do we use public key? Like I said, simple. You've got to come up with those private keys somehow, and in the world of no trust, that's where trust comes from. In order for Alice and Bob to share that session key in the TLS protocol, that's where public key crypto comes in. Well, like I said, Ralph Merkle, he kind of started the work on this, but never really went anywhere with it, so his name was often dropped from this thing, but I decided I'll put him here. So, but it's a Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and so when we published New Directions in Cryptography, 1976, it was one of the biggest pushes, progress pushes cryptology has ever seen. That was eye-opening, what their paper, what they did there. And Diffie-Hellman is still, whether it's classic Diffie-Hellman, sorry, not classic, modified Diffie-Hellman or Elliptic-Curve Diffie-Hellman, it's the basis for most of the key communications. There are some protocols that don't use it, but TLS, in a nutshell, I made a point here, it's before version 1.3, because after that we only have one round trip. But Alice has no idea who Bob is. Bob has no idea who Alice is. Alice says, hi. Bob says, hello, you want to communicate? And Bob says, some math over. And it's a public key cryptography happening here. It's magic. Again, our model says Charlie absorbs everything, every single communication. Bob says, hey Alice, here, compute this. Alice says, okay, and she does a computation here to discover, to compute the shared secret key K. And she was like, Bob, okay, compute this. And she sends him thing in the exponent again, not a math class. Bob computes the secret. Charlie saw everything, and at the end of this protocol, they each share a secret key K that they use in the communication. Charlie has no idea. That's beautiful to me. Is that not beautiful to you? Certificates, kind of a bit of a misconception. They don't have to do with encryption. Certificates are a basis for all trust that we have in the untrusting world. Because really, you can't have trust. Because you don't know who anyone is. They can be the bad guy. And what we do, we choose to put our trust in these certificate authorities who kind of are guardians. They try to do their homework and see that people are who they say they are, but still today to get a TLS cert, it's like nothing. You don't need to prove that much. Yeah, so this is a big thing I want to hit on. It's a common question. So again, yeah, public key crypto relies on several assumptions. They rely on assumption that factorization is a hard mathematical problem. So is the discrete logarithm problem. So technically speaking, we don't know that they are hard. We don't know that they're not hard either. We can't prove that. Now, it goes kind of like indirect proof that the best minds in the world have been trying to efficiently solve those problems for over half a century. So far, nothing. So it gives us some peace of mind, but we can't prove that those problems are hard. But the thing is, weird thing is that all these problems, they're not quite the same, but they are quite related. They go into this category of non-deterministic polynomial times. And again, don't worry about the term. It means that these are exponential time algorithms. And, well, the common question is, well, what if tomorrow somebody somewhere comes up with this magical algorithm that can factor efficiently? And there is a C algorithm that more or less factors efficiently, but it takes forever. Or what if somebody solves elliptic curve DLP problem? And so a hint, not how really things work. Because so first of all, if somebody could solve one of those problems, they would probably solve all of them, and there are many, many famous problems. Knapsack problem, there's the traveling salesman, there's the grouping of graphs, I think called click problem or something like that. If somebody were to solve one of them, so first of all, yes, it would break all public key cryptography immediately. But I don't think humanity would care, because it would be one of those pushes that really transforms everything. And the thing is, again, nobody has been able to do it so far, but people have been trying. So it's really not the thing that somebody might come up with an algorithm tomorrow that will break the whole world. It's not how it works. It's not how any of this works. Okay, I have a few minutes before we go to questions. Some of the other blunders in history, remember the Estonian card presses of last year? Well, guess what? If there are blunders in private key sector, there are definitely, perhaps even more blunders in public key sector. You really have to choose very well how you have to choose carefully your moduli, and you have to choose carefully your keys. They screwed up how they were choosing the keys, and what that kind of did is it made a mathematically hard problem into an efficiently solvable problem, and they got burnt by this. And so in the chip itself, I believe the keys that the chip chose, they were no good. They were easily factorable. And the point of RSA is that given the public key, you should never be able to recover private key efficiently. You can try, and your thing will be going when the sun burns out, probably. A point of note that sometimes crypto blunders are good. There have been some ransomware that the bad guys really didn't know what they were doing, and in fact, Kaspersky Labs, there's a couple of Jeff and Rakhni, they screwed up, and Kaspersky Labs, they came up with just a simple program that reversed everything they did. Just a quick word about passwords. I think they're covered so often that I'm not even going to go into details. If you store in the plain text, I'm very sorry, you're an idiot. If you store just a hash, it's no good completely. First of all, you can pre-compute a bunch of hashes, rainbow table attacks. Second of all, it defeats the whole purpose, because here, Fluffy Bunny is a password for both Alice and Charlie. Well, guess what? Same plain text, same hashes, if it's not salted hash. But hey, salted hashes, right? That solves the problem. Right? No, wrong. What's the problem with just salting a hash? Well, so again, say the adversary steals the whole flipping table. And say the adversary knows some other passwords for, say, Alice, from other sites compromised. What he can simply do is plug in her passwords, and that's going to compute. You simply take the salt that the database has, and no, you never really encrypt salt, because that's not the point of salt. The point of salt is simply to make adversary's computation more expensive and prevent the same passwords into the same hashes. But say if one of Alice's passwords from somewhere else is Fluffy Bunny 1, this will compute, and you will know immediately that you cracked, air quotes, her password. You have to stretch those hashes with something like an HMAC, and you have to store another secret out of the database. Again, key storage is not, I'm not going to go into how you store keys and what repositories, but the thing is, there has to be another secret out of this database. And if that's the case, adversary will try to compute and compute and compute, sign will burn out, time will stop, and they'll still be computing. So, and if he steals the table now, he's bad like Brian, because, I mean, have fun computing. Waste your GPU cycles or whatever. Okay, before we go into questions, just a couple more things. I have 2 more slides. Elliptic-Curve Crypto. For some reason, when I go to crypto talks, it's always like put into the future of cryptography. Elliptic curves have been used for years now, and they're well studied. And there are many curves, and the curves new curves are proved to be good all the time. First of all, elliptic-curve crypto has nothing to do with ellipses. It's not some kind of it's not an ellipse in the graph. Again, it's still publicly crypto. Publicly crypto has to do with prime numbers. Elliptic-curve crypto, so believe it or not, this is a valid mathematical curve. It doesn't have to be a line. It doesn't, and some curves are like, they can be like a line, a circle, some other thing. It's all a valid mathematical curve. And elliptic-curve crypto simply has to do with computing points. And elliptic-curve crypto also says that computing points in some variations is easy, in others it's hard. Adding points is easy, multiplying them it's a bit more difficult. And if what happens in elliptic-curve crypto is, so you choose your keys, and when you multiply x times, usually it's 250 to the power of 256, and the thing is, it's really hard to recompute that. So that's all elliptic curve is. But the main problem is, what curve do you choose? There are several improved curves. There's a Diffie curve, but some people don't want to use this because NSA came up with that one, I believe. And so that's all elliptic curve is. It's simply you have to choose a proper curve. You choose proper keys, and it's been used by Google for years now. It's widely used. It's not future. It's now. In fact, classical Diffie-Hellman is sometimes not even used anymore. It's elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. Quantum. Can't do crypto and not talk about quantum. So it's said that if quantum stuff doesn't confuse you, you're not getting the whole thing about quantum. So I'm not even going to try to go into. So I read for my class. I have tried to read some papers and get more into it. I got halfway through, and it was no, I can't. It's too much for me. So I'm not going to talk about gateways or anything. So a qubit simply is a particle. It's a very small particle, and when it's in superposition, it's both 0 and 1. Therefore, so quantum computers are not magic. They simply obey the laws of quantum physics. They can compute things incredibly fast, orders of magnitude faster than normal computers. So they don't break the RSA problem. They don't break elliptic-curve cryptography, but they are able to compute that efficiently enough where you have to throw them out. But they do it in it's not a magical thing that they do. They simply compute at an incredible speed, and they recover the keys before you would want to say, okay, now we don't care about those keys. Half a century has passed. So there are two sides to this, and some people say, oh, quantum is a thing, we're going to see it in 10 years. Some people say quantum is impossible because right now, I think it's a millisecond or something that we can sustain several qubits. So at this point, to have a full functioning quantum box, it's going to take many years. But when that happens, RSA and ECC are dead. However, there is no panic because people are smart and people have already years ago started going into post-quantum crypto. Quantum computers do not break symmetric key cryptography. They simply reduce it, I think it's about by half. So symmetric key is fine. You simply just increase the key and you're fine there. And all you have to do is redefine what a public key cryptography is. And it's already done. Google has a couple of algorithms going on. It's been, the competition was last year. This competition was last year. And the International Association for Cryptologic Research, they're doing this already. So by the time quantum is a thing, we'll have algorithms solid enough to withstand all that. So it's not a question of, oh my God, the world's coming to an end, quantum's going to blow up RSA. RSA is old. And yeah, it's still used today everywhere, but the elliptic curve is pretty much going to replace it. Again, I don't know, it's my personal opinion. Elliptic curve is pushing RSA out. All right. And again, my point to everything was that don't take for granted it's encrypted. There are so many blunders that people can commit when doing this. Just always ask, encrypted how? Show me. Show me how you do it. And if they can't, yeah, it's not worth the risk. All right.